It was not my intention to do another stream about No Way Home. I had a person this morning that really irritated me with regard to this movie. And also, I should mention that there will be spoilers in this as there were last time. So please do not click if you haven't seen the movie or don't want to be spoiled. I'm so sick and tired of people, trying to accuse me of revealing stuff just by discussing something. And even after you say this will have spoilers, they still watch and then they get mad when you spoil something. So, um, when I did the spoiler review on Saturday, right, I purposely didn't put the movie's full name, and I just put No Way Home uh, to get as least amount of attention as possible. Because when you have people who are sycophants for anything, you run the risk of them coming and like messing up the dialogue. Um, and that did kind of happen on Saturday, where there was a guy that was trying to say they did the villains right this time. When I was saying that the movie has too many villains. Um, and this kind of leans more into another conversation that's worth having. So a lot of times when you like something older than something new, people will accuse you of having nostalgia, right? They'll say that supposedly blinds you to recognizing the quality of something new, which I've always said is total BS because this is often trotted out. For example, if someone likes, just to give you another example, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z more than Super. And I would always say it's just because Dragon Ball and Z are, especially in the manga, are just better written series, in my opinion. But I knew that the time in which I saw that stuff had nothing to do with it because I looked at, Fighters, Universe 2, it's basically, you don't have that if you can still enjoy the newer material with regard to the games to an extent that is as much or even more than older stuff. So their narrative didn't really work because they had these other forms of media that were just more consistently put together in a well-made manner. So they had to just keep saying, "Oh, if you don't like this show, then there's something wrong with you." By the way, a new chapter that came out today, and I'm only going to read it because I can't find anybody to give me a plot summary. So that's my chore. But just to give you some more examples, I was in ninth grade when The Dark Knight Rises came out. Saw it, thought it was good. Didn't think it was as good as Dark Knight, but what could be. And one of my classmates got up and shouted that it was the greatest movie of all time. The same thing I heard said about the first Avengers. The same thing I heard said about Infinity War, which I do really, really like. Endgame. Pretty much anytime there's like an event style movie or just a new movie, people will hail it as being very good, the greatest, stuff like that. And No Way Home has been no exception. I have this person I was talking to yesterday who said that it was the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time, and I laughed. This wouldn't even make my top three, but it was really comedic because they wanted to, I guess, engage me in some kind of debate, and it is so irritating when you have people who you sit them down and you explain what your problem with something is, right? There's no nebulous terms. You give examples from the thing that they're saying did a good job of how it didn't do a good job with regard to a certain plot point. And it's like you're speaking Chinese, like you're talking to someone who just forgot what English sounds like. Um, and let me read what Dio wrote before I go any further. No, Dark Knight Rises was not the best of all time. Well, Dio, that's why I brought it up. It was recency bias. The movie had just come out. He really liked it. So in his recency bias, he declared it to be the best movie ever. So I'm saying that I would nowhere near say that's the best film of all time. Best film of all time probably isn't a superhero movie. That's going to piss a lot of people off. Um, but I'm saying it as an example of how when something new comes out and people are riding the hype train, a lot of times their praise for it kind of starts getting sycophantic, just like, oh, this has no flaws, it's perfect. Or then even if they admit that it has some issues or something they don't like, they try to like sweep it under the rug or make a million excuses for it. Um, one of the things I always remembered is that even after I converted to liking Spider-Man 3, I would always say it has too many villains. That if it was just Sandman and Harry, it would have worked a lot better for me than sticking Venom in there in the last 10 minutes. But I still said, I thought they did a decent job of, I guess, setting that up. Um, so you got to remember, for me, it was really ironic, right, to see a movie I liked get trashed for over 10 years, right? By people saying, "Oh, it has too many villains," right? 3 villains is too many, but 5 in No Way Home is not. And, I was wondering how are they gonna handle all these villains, and they did not do that good of a job. I've given specific examples of what I'm talking about. I said, I think they handled, Green Goblin and Doc Ock relatively well, right? And as much as I'm not the biggest fan of Electro from TASM 2, I thought he actually was there for a reason. He actually has a role to play in the story that's like specific to his character. So being the last one that Peter captures, the one that blows up the apartment, allows the villains to escape. Those are things that are specifically for him. Being the last one that's taken out before Goblin shows up at the end. Um, that's all stuff that is good for the character specifically. But when you look at Lizards and Sandman, right? The two of them. Almost next to nothing is done with either of them. You get a couple of lines by Sandman about, "Oh, I want to see my daughter. I don't trust anybody." But the character you can take him and Lizard and cut them out of this whole movie, and you would be missing nothing because they don't have any specific thing to do. Um, so for example, I just gave the three things that Electro does. I could mention that, Doc Ock's the first one we see. We spend some more time with him in the other ones. He has a very important role in the final battle by tricking Electro. Like those are specific things to his character. And Sandman and Lizards collectively do not get even half of that or a third of that type of attention or specificness to their respective role in the story, which is why I said they could be cut out. Like you could just have Peter capture Electro by himself, and then when he's at the apartment, Green Goblin manipulates him. He blows it up. The two of them escape, but he leaves, and then Green Goblin beats up Peter, and you would be missing not a single beat because after the apartment explodes, all the villains, right? Because this is when the other what's show up. I'm not saying it because I'm still reluctant about saying spoiler type stuff, but after the apartment explosion, all of the villains in this damn movie disappear for like a solid 10 or 20 minutes for no reason, by the way. Like you're gonna have Doc Ock become good again, and then he's not going to help Peter come up with the technology to make the other villains actually become good. Like, and that was the biggest issue I had with his character. Like that 20-minute window or 10-minute window where he just disappears for no reason. It makes you could argue if you're trying to be like very friendly toward this movie. Well, the other villains disappear so they can focus on how Peter deals with what's happened. But it's like it doesn't make any sense for Doc Ock to go because you have him you know fully converted now. He is definitely smart enough to help Peter with making the cures for the other villains, and because of what happened to him in Spider-Man 2 when he lost his wife, he could relate to him losing his aunt. It was a completely wasted opportunity. And I'm saying that as someone that thinks that they handled Doc Ock pretty well. That they still could have done a little bit more with his character than they ended up doing. And there were that, even without doing that, there are still specific things in the movie itself that they do with his character that they don't do with either Sandman or Lizard. Um, and this guy it was so annoying, man. Just sitting there and explaining that to him. And just like the defenses, they don't make sense. It's like he says, uh, what is it? Of course he attacked Peter. He can't trust him. He don't know him and other things. Sandman doesn't know about magic teleport. And I said, Sandman in Spider-Man 3, which is what this version is supposed to be, um, is not some random thug head. Was it random thug, hothead maniac? So it doesn't make sense to me. Where the same Sandman, right? Who, when Spider-Man comes to confront him in Spider-Man 3, he says, "Leave now. I don't want to hurt you." Basically, it's like really like trying to not fight him, admits he doesn't want to fight him, is going to see Electro get teleported away and then not just ask what happened before trying to attack Peter. Do you see how those two characterizations don't line up together? In Spider-Man 3, this character, right, supposed to be the same version, has Spider-Man confront him and says, I don't want to fight you before they actually start battling. Um, and then in this, he sees Electro get teleported. He asks, "What did you do?" Peter doesn't even get to say a sentence before being attacked. And you really think that's consistent characterization, that actually lines up. Again, if this was a new version of Sandman, they might be able to make me think, okay, well, this is something he would do because he's scared and also like very. But the same version who openly was remorseful about having to fight Spider-Man, who only had a beef with him to begin with because of what he felt was his getting in the way of him paying for his daughter. It doesn't make any sense. It's not consistent. Sandman and Spider-Man 3 were accidentally turned into a supervillain. He wanted to have a normal life. Right, but I'm saying that based off of his characterization in Spider-Man 3, I do not believe that the Sandman of that movie, which this one is supposed to be, would, after seeing someone get teleported, it would be different if he saw Peter just rip Electro's head off or something. After seeing Electro get teleported away, not even allow Spider-Man to explain to him what he just did. That's my point. Now, going back to what I was talking about, Sandman's role in this movie is pretty awful. He's at the apartment. He has a couple of lines, a little joke where he's spilling his sand on the chair. I did laugh. I thought it was funny. And then after the apartment gets blown up, he escapes and he just disappears for the rest of the movie until the final battle. And it doesn't make any sense to me because like they have him help Peter with Electro, right? Because they're trying to establish that he's the Sandman from Spider-Man 3. He's not as bad or as evil as these other villains. So why would you have him then like teleport away, just disappear, right? After you know, supposedly being one of the few villains who's not on the run, just attacking. And that's why I said it was such a waste opportunity for both his character and just the plot of the movie, right? Because there is this like whole section where all the villains just vanish because they're sucking off these other, alternate versions of Peter. Like it doesn't make any sense with Doc Ock, but it especially doesn't make any sense with both Doc Ock and Sandman because the two of them are supposed to be the ones that aren't as evil or aren't as antagonistic or aren't as villainous or who actually want to go home and have shown by partnering with the protagonist that this is something they intend to carry out via helping them. But that's why I said this is what recency bias does. When people who admit they like the movie, I gave the movie an 8 out of 10. When people who like the movie can't even say, you know what, a couple of things I didn't really like too much about the plot, and these were them. Can't even say that without having this like weird pushback that is not addressing any of the points we're making. Like the guy tells me, oh, his role is to not trust Peter. It's like, yeah, that's literally filled by three other villains. Which is why I said that if the movie had three villains like Spider-Man 3, I actually might like it more than Spider-Man 3. Because if it just stuck to Green Goblin, Electro, and Doc Ock, all three of them in the actual movie have an important role to play. Some specific things they do that separate them as characters. Sandman and Lizard are literally just there because they needed a villain from every movie, uh, every Spider-Man movie up to the ones made by the MCU. And it really sucks because if just another example, if they had cured Lizard earlier, or if they, actually did something interesting with his character, we could have seen him trying to help, create the cures, right? And then maybe there's like a plot twist where he betrays them after seeming to be normal, like to have been rational this time. But it goes back to my thing of how they don't like know what they want to do, and they stuck. This is basically like a toy box kind of movie where they stuck a lot of characters in it, but they didn't really have an idea for what they wanted to do with all of them. So you get this disjointed film where, there are some that get focused in development, right? The three villains I mentioned, and also Peter, right? But I don't ever want to hear somebody else say Spider-Man 3 has too many villains, and then this has even more than that. And at least with each villain in that movie, I can point specific things they did as a character that actually affect the plot. You could cut Lizard and Sandman both out of this, and you wouldn't be missing a single thing. Oh, the worst offense. You're too negative. It's a good film. Yeah, he's not saying anything as ridiculous as that, but he is like refusing to acknowledge the points being made here. Like it's just you could tell just like blind offenses. God, I swear. All the villains get enough screen time. What's the point of having a lot of screen time if you don't actually do anything that affects the story? Like I don't what is the purpose of having a character there whose role is literally done better by other people? Like I don't get it. I heard the beginning was awful too. Um, you know what? I think the best part's probably the apartment stuff, which by the way doesn't even make sense from like just a standpoint of logic. Like why would you have these people who are very powerful not non-restrained and just walking around but again, like that's going to get me into even more criticisms of this movie that people don't accept. Um, no, the beginning part I thought was okay. I didn't like that they give Daredevil a cameo. Like I'm really sick of the cameo era where we just stick people and stuff for 2 seconds so we can prop them up as being important to something else. Like a lot of people are saying that the other two Spider-Men are going to like lead into Spider-Man 4 and TASM 3, and I'm just I would like that, but I don't think they're gonna do it. No, recency bias is a very dangerous thing, man. It can really destroy people's minds. They start saying some stuff doesn't even make any sense. Instead of having that cameo, they could have actually worked on a scene to improve the villains. Exactly. But see, that's why I said you have a 2 hour plus movie, right? And most of these villains are together, like they spend time on screen together, but they almost never interact. Um, and even when they have like a role they could play in the story that's specific to them, it's always passed up. You don't see Peter talk to Sandman and ask him, why do you want to go home so badly? You don't see Sandman try to help the Peters defeat the villains because he's just there for what is basically a glorified cameo. Same thing with Lizards. I seriously think he might have maybe 7 lines in this whole movie. And Lizard is so insignificant that when they go to the apartment with all the villains, they don't even bring him in there. He's just sitting inside the car. And then he escapes after Electro blows everything up and then disappears from the movie until the final battle. And that was one of the biggest issues I had with this movie. I said, you know what? You have Green Goblin in this, right? And you try to set him up as the arch nemesis to this iteration of Peter by having him off Aunt May. But it doesn't work because they spend so like one of the reasons the first Spider-Man movie is so good to me as far as just pacing and having some kind of catharsis at the end of it is because you have multiple meetings between Peter Parker and Norman Osborn. They first meet when they go to school, they meet again at the graduation, they meet again at the apartment. At least 3 scenes, right, of just them not even in their superhero, supervillain guises. Then they have 4 encounters as Spider-Man and Green Goblin right throughout the movie. This version of Peter spends a little bit of time with Norman at the start. Norman loses his mind. They get into this big fight, kills his aunt, and then disappears from the rest of the movie for I swear it must have been 20 minutes all the way up until the final battle. It doesn't work because this version of Aunt May was pretty lousy. I'll just come out and admit I didn't really think she was that interesting. But also because, we don't get to actually see them have any type of rivalry. In the first Spider-Man, we saw a rivalry between Spider-Man and Green Goblin. Again, 4 encounters compared to this one's 2. It's basically Goblin showing up and kicking over his sandcastle, have no rapport or interaction with each other. Right, but I'm saying that they try to set up Green Goblin as the movie's main villain or, central antagonist, and it just doesn't work because we don't spend enough time with him. There's too many damn characters in this thing for it to fully be as good as it could have been. And that's why I said this would have benefited so much better if they just had 3 instead of 5. If they had Electro, just keep Electro where he is, right? Last one that Peter encounters, blows up the building, is the main sub boss before they fight Goblin, and he's you have him taken out by this by Spider-Man and Electro and Doc Ock teaming up, whatever. Doc Ock, keep him as he is, with the exception of after all the villains escape, have a scene where he's with Spider-Man helping him make the cure because that's something that Doc Ock is known to do. He's very smart and he can assist him in ways that the other villains cannot, even if they were reformed. Then the part at the end, you keep that as well. And then have Green Goblin show up during that 15-20 minute window of the villains all just going missing in action, taunting Peter and saying, this is why you couldn't save her. This is why I will also be back for those little friends of your, because remember, in this continuity, everyone who knows that he's Spider-Man, so they know who his friends are, which is why they weren't able to get into the school because people know who they are. And it's like that would have been so much better than what we ended up getting because all 3 antagonists, right, would have a specific role in the story. They wouldn't just be there for glorified cameos. People act like just because of villains in multiple scenes, they're good. Like, no, Sandman in this movie sucks. Same thing with Lizard. And it's really horrible because, one of the things I was hoping for before this came out was that we could actually see something interesting. Because I always talk about how I think Lizard is one of the more interesting Spider-Man villains because it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When he's Lizard, he's bad. When he's Kirk Connors, he's good. He's helpful. Like I said, there are plenty of comics where Lizard doesn't even appear. It's just Kirk Connors helping out Spider-Man. And that's something that would have been, we got to see a little bit of that in Spider-Man 3, by the way, when he helps him out with the symbiote. But that's something this movie would have really benefited from because a lot of the rogues gallery of this character match him in intellect and could have assisted with taking out the other villains if they were actually allowed to do something other than have 5 minutes of screen time and 3 or 4 lines while being on screen. Yeah, you're right about recency bias. People will just uncritically praise something because it's new. Like I said, I gave this movie an 8 out of 10. I gave it praises on Saturday. I talked about what I liked, what I didn't like. I don't believe in that trash at all. New movies come out every year that I think are good. And it was very easy for me after seeing this one time to look at it and say, do I really think they did that right? No, I don't. So, I don't have this. But see, Akatsuki Merchant, one of the reasons I named the stream this way is because a lot of people, when you don't like something they like, will say that you have nostalgia. So, for example, if you like Naruto and Shippuden, right? Which I already said I love Naruto, but I'm not the biggest fan of Shippuden. Shippuden's just okay to me at most. If you love those two or like those two but don't like Boruto, they'll say you have nostalgia. That's why the new series isn't appealing to you. If you like Dragon Ball and Z but don't like Super, those are GT for example, but especially Super because that's the new one that people sucked off. they'll say that you're recency bias. That they'll say that you have nostalgia. But the thing is, the opposite of nostalgia is recency bias, where a new movie will come out and people will come online and just praise it like they have lost their damn. Like I remember when Iron Man 3 came out, people were saying that was the best Iron Man movie, and I thought it was hilarious because while I enjoyed Iron Man 3, I don't. I just the first one is perfect. Like I would give that a 10 out of 10 easily. So I'm just saying to you that there are multiple instances where a movie will come out in some series. Hell, look at the new Ghostbusters. I've seen people say this is the best one since the first one. It's like I like it, but I don't like it as much as the second. This is the best one since the first one. So I'm just simply saying to you that with a lot of new stuff that comes out, which is why I also gave the example of how when The Dark Knight Rises came out, I had a classmate say it was the best movie of all time. Um, a lot of stuff people just when they see it they get like really on this hype train of oh my god I just witnessed something so new and amazing, and it's just they shut their brains off from even being receptive at all to any potential criticism. Like a lot of the stuff I like, people make reviews of it, and I do avoid it because I do think a lot of people are unfair when they review stuff. But I've sat through like negative reviews of things I like, and I've laughed because of how stupid I thought the points were. New Ghostbusters is nostalgia, dude. Look, I liked it. I think it's way better than the 2016 one. Um, I just don't like that they don't use the original members until the ending. I thought that was stupid. Like that was just they really do have a glorified cameo. People only talk about the last 30 minutes of the movie. Yeah. But I'm just saying to you that with any new thing that comes out, you're gonna have people who like it so much to where they start keeping all this praise on it. And that's what recency bias is, where it's you love something so much that just came out that you refuse to acknowledge any faults or criticisms of it. Or if you do, there's always like a way of deflecting from it, you know? And so what if I have nostalgia for something? I'm allowed to feel and have nostalgia, so it makes me laugh when they say I have nostalgia. Well, look, it's just a stupid damn thing they throw your way because they can't accept that someone likes an older thing more than a new thing. So, for example, there were a lot of people back when Batman Begins came out who said this is the best Batman movie ever. Of course, people who liked Batman 89 and Batman Returns were like, yeah, fly a kite with that one. But they said that to them. Like I can find old message boards from 2005 where they talked about that. Um, with regard to Dark Knight, you had people who I mean, it's the same thing pretty much with any of these series that just go on for a long enough time where people will say if you like something older, it's because you have nostalgia for it. It was the same thing when I had people when I would tell people that just let's go to One Piece for example. I would say that Dressrosa is a poor man's version of Alabasta, and they would say, "Oh, well, you only like it because it's always." He's like, "No, it's a cleaner arc that's not as long, that doesn't have all these different subplots and characters thrown in. It's just a much more straightforward part of this story than what we ended up getting with Dressrosa, which borrowed many of its plot elements from it. Like, oh, look, a warlord who takes over a country and a princess who partners with the yeah, it's like this is just literally taking the same thing and doing it again except trashier. Just like I mentioned before, the plot twist in Homecoming of the Vulture being the father of the love interest, that's literally ripped from Spider-Man 4, where they were going to have Felicia Hardy as the daughter to Vulture, right? Like as a seeming love interest for Peter in that movie. I don't know if they were going to actually do like a love triangle again or not. I don't know. But I'm saying that traditionally Black Cat is a love interest for Peter, and in the original plot for Spider-Man 4, they were going to have her be you know, the daughter for Vulture. And I'm saying that that's something that Homecoming ended up doing, which I don't think is a coincidence, but whatever. I just don't like subpar scripts with actors that you're attached to in them. Yeah, I'm just saying that I don't think a No Way Home was subpar. I just think it could have been better. And I think a lot of people, because of how much hype was surrounding it for over a year, are going to see it and just kind of not acknowledge anything that could have been improved upon. So you're going to keep getting movies where They have villains that are underdeveloped that barely do anything. Just like I remember one of the criticisms I have with the Marvel movies is that they always have every time they have a good villain, except for Loki, they just kill him off after one movie. And it looks like we're going to keep repeating that pattern. It's like telling someone who likes chocolate chip cookies that they have nostalgia for it. Like, yeah, so what? They don't need some greater justification for liking a thing. Not are you old one, nor are you old one. I think it's like really funny. Like, there are a lot of foods and snacks I'll eat that I started eating as a kid, and it's like, why can't I just enjoy it? Like, why do I have to have nostalgia for it? It's like, yeah, I remember when I ate this 10 years ago, but it's just, I can just enjoy it. Like, okay, I saw Spider-Man 2 for the first time when I was what, 6. I come back to it, I still enjoy it. And it's I know that me liking stuff isn't associated with just seeing it as a kid because there were plenty of things I saw as a kid that I thought were trash. I thought The Last Airbender was bad. I thought Dragon Ball Evolution was garbage. And those both came out when I was a kid. But also, there's stuff that's new that I really like. I really liked Infinity War, um, just because I'd never seen a movie, as far as a superhero one's concerned anyway, give the villain more screen time than a protagonist. That was very unique. And I thought Thanos was one of the best villains in any movie I've ever seen. So, I'm just saying, like, I would also give more examples. Like, I would say, oh, I really like The Dark Knight that came out when I was a kid. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm just giving an example of how that's something that came out relatively recently that I like to the same level as something that I supposedly would have seen as a kid. You get what I'm saying? Just that's why I think that criticism is so stupid. So like, anytime something new comes out, they always just hype it up and say it's so great and amazing. That recency bias goes a long way. But of course, there are examples where there's a new thing that comes out that gets the praise that it gets, for stuff that actually is warranted. Like Infinity War, for example, I just want to like do a contrast because a lot of people are saying did call No Way Home Spider-Man Endgame, but Infinity War was good because it was the culmination of a lot of foreshadowing that had been going on for about 10 years. Maybe not 10 years specifically, but you have this universe that's like building on itself. And with No Way Home, you have this is the first time in the whole franchise where they acknowledge we've had reboots, we've had these different actors play this character, different villains. Let's all put them in one movie or put a lot of them in one movie. And a lot of that goes back to how a lot of the reason that this plot doesn't work is because there was no planning for this. They didn't know when they were making TASM 2 that they were going to fail to meet their own expectation and end up rebooting and starting all over again. No, it just frustrates me that every time someone online has an opinion, people get mad and demand you have some greater argument for liking something. Well, this guy really wants to just debate this movie, and I'm not interested, so I'm just gonna let him talk to himself. Like if you think Sandman and Lizard had enough screen time in that movie, I don't know what else to say to you. I've literally sat here and explained how a character can be in a movie for 7 or 8 or 9 minutes and it still doesn't actually do anything for their character. Which is why I praised the role of Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Electro because they all actually have things that are specific to their characters that take effect. Like it's that's why I said it's so sad that people are caught up on not wanting to criticize anything ever. Because like I said, when I was a kid, you know what I used to read every time I saw Spider-Man 3 review? Too many villains, too many characters, too many villains, too many characters. I can factually prove this movie has more characters than Spider-Man 3. Of course, one got raked over by critics, and this one's getting, heaps of praise, even though it's way more overstuffed. As it's so inconceivable that someone can like something they don't. Yeah. Or even if you but here's the screwed up Akatsuki merchant, even when you like the same stuff as them, if you criticize it, they get angry. Like, I gave this movie an 8 out of 10 in spite of me thinking that, you know, 40% of the villains in it weren't used that good or well at all. That's why I said you can't win with people because even when you throw them a bone, when you say, "Hey, you know what? I liked it, but there were some issues I had with it," they will just rake you over the coals. Like, you cannot succeed with them. It's really sad. Which is why I said it's like sycophants because when you get caught up on liking something so much that like no criticism of it at all, right? Can you accept possibly? I just think it's BS. And it really makes me question what's the point of even explaining to you why I don't like this or don't like a certain part of it if you're just going to like brush it off. Because I gave specific examples of how they don't, Lizard and Sandman do not do anything in this movie specific to their characters. He says, "Well, the point of them being there is they don't trust Peter." It's like, okay, this plot was like, God, the point I made was that you can cut the two of them out and you would miss nothing, which is why I gave the examples of specific plot related things that the other three villains do. Because the only thing I demand an explanation why they like is because, like Cowboy, okay, I'm just saying that these people really want to have a debate, which I don't really have an issue with. But if you're not going to address what I'm saying, or you're just like always going to find a way of, not actually taking it as something that's worth considering, then it's just like, what's the point? It's just like that guy that clown that came on the stream on Saturday. It's like, oh yeah, all the villains were handled right this time. Like how? What about the way Sandman or Lizard were handled was good? And then he starts asking, where was Venom from Spider-Man 3? Where was Goblin from TASM 2? So just completely ignores, the follow-up question to his trash. I'm just saying, I was someone who really wanted to like the movie, and I did enjoy it, but I don't see how you can have people tell you that Spider-Man 3 had by having three villains had too many, but this movie by having five somehow doesn't. I think this is entirely based around people being really excited for a movie, and there are some good and great performances in this movie, right? But also making the plot take a back seat because if I start going through the movie, there are certain issues I have with it, like the idea that Peter is supposed to be a smart person, right? Very intelligent young man, but he doesn't even think to call the university, right? Before he goes to ask Doctor Strange to undo with the everyone knowing his identity, right? Which directly led to Ned and MJ not getting into school. Do you see how like, oh yes, Peter's this very smart, intelligent young man, smarter than most people, right? But then he can't he doesn't think to call the university to make the case for why his friends should still be there. Okay. It's like the movie even knows that there's something weird about this. Um, and then also the part the apartment, right? Where like you have five supervillains, and the only ones that you have control over are Lizard because you got him in the back of that car, and which we don't even know if that actually was able to hold him or not because he breaks out of it. But him and Doc Ock are the only ones you actually have restraints on to keep them from doing stuff. And you have two other villains, right? Electro and Sandman, who you know attacked you, and you bring them into your house with nothing to keep them restrained. But see, that's why I said the movie screws itself up because all they had to do for this to work was just have it be like, okay, well, we don't know if Green Goblin's actually dangerous because we haven't seen him be violent, right? We know that he has like multi personalities. He's acting decent. Because remember, no one in this timeline other than Doc Ock knows about the different him and Sandman. But you get the idea. They could have had If it was just 3 villains, right, instead of 5 for no reason. Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Electro go into the apartment. Electro and, and Doc Ock have stuff on them, restraints, right? And then Norman, again, still acting like a normal person, but actually Green Goblin, that psyche comes up to Electro and tells him that they're trying to stick something on you that'll make you less of yourself, but you should light them up for, and then takes his restraints off. And that's when this stuff breaks out. That would have made that whole scene much more logic based. That would have made that whole scene make more sense. And it's like, eh, that's one of the most frustrating parts about having these, like, how do I explain it? When you have a series, right, where these characters have different interesting powers, dynamics, etc., there's so much more that usually can be done with their like specific character quirks and relationships. And it's like the writers don't even think like it would make a lot of sense for Norman to be the only one of those three that wouldn't be restrained on the premise of this film because the other characters that are there, so Peter and Aunt May, don't know about the alternate personality. You know, they don't know that on the flip of a switch he can turn back to being the Green Goblin. So that's another issue I have with the movie that I just gave you. Like I always try to give an explanation of what they could have done because I don't like to just sit here and go, well, to me this felt like, I don't like doing that. I try to say I had this problem. I think they should have done this instead because I think that if these people are getting paid God knows how much money to write this stuff, and I can come up with something that to me makes more sense or is more logic based than them. It's really that's more of an insult to them. Like you guys get paid to do this and paid pretty well, by the way, and you have a script that is that's so janky in places, and like I'm still trying to figure out where all those villains went for that whole must be 15-20 minute segment after like in between when they leave the apartment and at the bridge. I would love to know. No, in between when they leave the apartment and the Statue of Liberty fight. I'd love to know where they all vanished to. I think if they were excited for a movie and there hasn't been anything good in theaters, we all knew that Shang-Chi and Eternals were filler. I don't know why. Like, who at Marvel was like, all right, we gotta make a movie about somebody. We can't do Punisher. We can't do Daredevil. Let's do Shang-Chi. Like, just, I think I probably would rather have seen Jubilee get a movie. Like, if you want to have some, I guess, what is it, Asian character have a film, I would have preferred Jubilee. At least I actually know who that is. And that would kind of go back to that thing of, oh yeah, I forgot they can't use the mutants yet, but it would be like in line with the whole trying to give different X-Men members their own movie. No, people don't want to accept anything's wrong with this film. They're just like their head is so far up the No Way Home hype train that they just are completely dismissing any criticism you might have. No matter how much it's based in logic, no matter how much it makes sense, they don't care. It's really unfortunate. So I said I don't understand people and the way they act and the things that they like and just you know I've been fans of stuff before, but when people criticize things I like, and I don't believe it's like just being antagonistic nitpicks, um, I'll at least try to hear them out. Like how do I explain it? It's really sad to me that we have a lot of grown people who act like little kids when you try to sit them down and explain this is why I think this wasn't as good as it could have been. They just don't pay attention to any specific issues you might have with something. So if I say, "Hey, you know what? I like the movie, but they could have done this." "Oh no, this makes sense because da, 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 da." No, it doesn't, which is why I was able to give an example of what I'm talking about. Like, well, of course, Sandman doesn't trust Peter because He doesn't know. It's like, dude, the Sandman like holy hell, you act like they made a character. This is supposed to be the same Sandman from Spider-Man 3, the same one who, when confronted by Spider-Man in that movie, what were his first words to him? "I don't wanna hurt you. Leave now." Right? Telling like, warning him, "I don't want to have a fight with you. I'm not interested in battling. I just want to take this money and not hurt anybody." I don't see how you take a villain who says that, and then when Peter doesn't explain to him in less than 10 seconds what he did to Electro, I'm gonna attack you." You see how that doesn't make sense? And then you have Sandman, right? He wants to go home. He believes that them getting cured will allow him to go home. So why the hell does he vanish from the movie after the apartment battle? Why does he just disappear until the you see, like, do you see how it doesn't make sense? That's why I can't have conversations with them too much. Yeah, grown children. And it's so weird too, because it's like you'll make a point about I didn't like this. They'll ask for like some elaboration on it. And you know what? I just want to go back. So there's this one guy I don't talk to anymore, and he said that he didn't like Age of Ultron because he didn't think Ultron looked strong. And I was like, what does that mean? And he couldn't explain it and or whatever. And I was trying to like contrast when I brought that up how when I tell you a character's role was not significant, was minor, whatever, I give examples. I say, hey, they're barely in it. They only did this, which could have been done by anybody else. Um, I try to speak in as little nebulous terms as possible because I'm trying to get you to understand that when I criticize something in this movie, it's not because I want to just have a problem just to have a problem or I'm having some kind of feelings I can't elaborate on. I'm telling you, out of these five villains, three of them actually get stuff important to do that's significant to their characters, and the other two are just there for cameos and some weird mandate they have to have a villain from every movie in this franchise before the MCU got involved. Which is why I said, both Salmon and Lizard share a commonality of either being captured off screen or captured in less than a minute, very few lines in comparison with the other three, um, being underplayed during that scene at the apartment, disappearing for the rest of the movie up until the battle at the bridge, at the Statue of Liberty. So I'm not speaking in nebulous terms. I'm giving you examples from the movie of where I thought they weren't used that well, which is different from someone saying this character did not look strong. Like I don't, and I said I don't know what that means because his interpretation of what looks strong is different from mine. If you elaborate, they're just looking for someone to nitpick to act like it discovers everything you've said completely. Yeah, it's like I'm supposed to believe the same Sandman from Spider-Man 3 who told Spider-Man when they first met each other, "Leave now, I don't want to hurt you," is now going to try to attack or kill Peter because he didn't explain in 10 seconds why, like what he did to Electro. Yeah, I fully believe that. It's just that's why I said people don't even think. Like I'm saying this as a fan of the Raimi trilogy. I think it would have been better off if they just didn't even bring back Sandman. If they took him and Lizard and just didn't have him in this, it would be. I probably would move the movie up by maybe a point or like at least a point five because then it would actually be less characters involved with it. So the ones that are there can actually get some attention. Spider-Man 3 has too many characters. Yeah, five villains, three Peters, Ned, MJ, Aunt May, Happy, Flash, Jameson. That's like 14. Yeah, like I just it's so funny watching like modern Marvel stuff and how many characters are in it in almost everything, right? And then people have the nerve to sit here and tell you that like some older movie had more characters when it didn't, or had too many characters when it had way less. I saw somebody who said Batman Returns had too many characters. Like, let's see, you got Batman, Penguin, Catwoman. Was it Max Shrek? Whatever that guy's name is. His son. kind of it. Like, it's just remember same people who say stuff like that about a movie with five, and really it's four main characters, and like, oh, you also throw in Alfred and the Commissioners. That's like seven characters. We'll give a movie like this with twice as many, a pass and say, oh, it's great. If you, oh, okay, you already read that. You guys don't type anything for a while. No, I'm just saying that it's really funny watching a lot of the same criticisms like that you could make about older stuff or that people made about older stuff just be given a complete pass here. Like three villains is too many, but five isn't. It's weird too because um I would argue that all of the villains from Spider-Man 3 were more developed than Sandman and Lizard in this. Like we actually get to see Eddie get more and more like disillusioned before he becomes Venom. And the symbiote, and its influence on Peter as well in the same time. And then also, like multiple scenes of Sandman trying to like just stuff with his characterization of being someone that has bad luck. And, we don't even have to talk about Harry. He's way more developed than anybody in this movie out of any of the antagonists. He's the only villain that got a whole trilogy to be developed. Yeah, we don't even have to talk about him. That's why I said this whole series is just so weird to me. Like, oh, let's do a reboot and not do Spider-Man 4 where we don't have Jameson. And, we'd also have a villain who wants to turn the whole city into lizards and the costume looks like a basketball. Oh, let's do a sequel to that where we improve the costume, but we make the plot take a nosedive. I didn't like Topher Grace at the time, but I realized he was supposed to be like Peter in the first one before he gets powers getting bullied. Well, he's supposed to just be the evil counterpart to Peter. Like they have a similar physique, attempt to get the same type of job. It's a different take on Venom, but like I said, even if I didn't for example, I don't like the Amazing Spider-Man 2's Electro. I think it's just a very weird character with bad motivations. I'm just not a fan. I don't of really anything about the character. But be that as it may, I still acknowledge objectively he had a role to play in this story, whereas Sandman and Lizard, even if I liked them more, did not. No, I'm so tired of these people and their just weird stuff they like to do. It really seems like anytime there's something new, people just they really suck it off. Like they get so invested in it that they can't even comprehend the idea that there might be some issues, at hand. I boycott Amazing Spider-Man 2 because of I didn't see that in theaters. I didn't see any of them in theaters between Amazing Spider-Man and then this because I just get sick of reboots, man. Like you look at Batman, for example, right? Three movies with Nolan, reboot with Batman versus Superman, and basically three movies with him, even though none of them are actually about him, just as a specific, like actual just Batman by himself, Bat flick. Another reboot, and now we're getting the Batman. It's like, guys, I'm tired of starting over and over again every couple of years. Like, and it's the same thing. Like, oh, look, he's gritty and he's dark. Like, yeah, if I want that, I can just go watch the Nolan trilogy. Like, I really want to ask is I don't get why anyone is looking forward to the Batman at all. They're just gonna reboot it again, and we're gonna be playing the same stupid game forever. Three movies of dark and gritty Batman, which we've already seen before, and then reboot. Like, I get sick of it. Like we've had three iterations of that character in live action in 10 years. Because remember, Dark Knight Rises came out in 2012, so that came out in 2012. Batman versus Superman came out in 2016. and now the Batman's coming out next year. I'm not seeing that. Certainly not in theaters. And it sucks because it's like, why can't they just do something different? Like, for example, if they said, okay, if we get a sequel to this movie, we're gonna have Dick Grayson as Robin, and we want to like show his transformation to Nightwing over like 2 or 3 movies, right? Like if they said we want to not have this be a trilogy, we want to have at least 4 or 5, whatever. I'd be a lot more excited because we haven't seen Robin in any of these since Batman and Robin. So over 20 years, right? But it's like it's the same gritty. I work alone, like I don't care. I really am Batmaned out. And I hate that because there's a whole bunch of stuff about that character in the comics that's never been done in live action before. We've never had a series of movies where Robin becomes Nightwing. Or we had the Dark Knight, but we really haven't had a series of movies where Two Face becomes Harvey goes and becomes Two Face. Like there's so much you could do with that character that they don't do because they play it safe. They do the same thing over and over. Let me see. I read an article that said they stuck a volunteer on the side of his head because it looked cool. I knew it was going to be a pile. Other year, they based Robert Patterson's Batman off Kurt Cobain. Yeah, Batman is a want list, not to mention all the Batman animated movies that they come out with every year. I think it's up to 2 or 3 a year sometimes. Yeah, that's why I said I'm Batmaned out. Like, not even just counting the animated, because at least the animated ones, they try to adapt stuff from the comics that people haven't seen before, and that we probably won't see in a live action movie. So they have a higher chance of being diverse from each other. It's like every movie, I swear to you, since Batman and Robin, so beginning with Batman Begins, dark, gritty, more realistic. And it's just like at a certain point, when does it stop? Like, when do I get something different? And they don't even try to vary from each other anymore. Like, if they said, okay, we're gonna have Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson first time in the movie together in 20, that would instantly make me more interested. But they don't. It's the same loner BS, like do just an example. Imagine if there were just to give you an example, 9 Wonder Woman movies, right? And in every movie, she goes around spreading love, whatever, fighting villains with her lasso. Um, and then they say, all right, well, this one we're gonna bring in, I don't know, Wonder Girl. It's like, okay, well, at least that's something that's a little bit different, a sidekick. We barely ever get those in these anymore. So it's a thing of like, because there's so many different Batman movies from the past that I already think are really good. So that Batman '89, Batman Returns, um, Begins, The Dark Knight. I don't really have that much of an interest in seeing um any more Batman movies. Like I'm just kind of like whatever. Like they've done everything with him that they actually seem interested in doing. They've scared off because of Batman and Robin, I bet. Right, but I'm saying that if you keep doing this thing of having a character who has the most iconic sidekick out of anybody being by himself over and over, movie after movie, right? It starts to become redundant and not interesting because I've seen this already. The day that the Batman comes out, I'm going to read the plot summary on Wikipedia. I always do that, but I'm going to read the plot summary. And if it sounds like they don't do anything interesting or new, right? I'm going to just go watch another Batman movie. I've got plenty to pick from, live action and animated. They're doing everything they can to avoid the Joel Schumacher film. Someone tried to tell me that Robin wasn't an iconic character. Yeah, that's complete bogus. Like Robin is literally the most iconic sidekick of anybody out of all of them. Robin's more iconic than most superheroes, actually. Like there are plenty of people who know Robin that don't even have never before a few years ago never even heard of Aquaman or pretty much anyone that's not in like the founding members of the Justice Leagues, like Green Arrow. Martian Manhunter is in the Martian Manhunter is in the league, but he's not prominently featured outside of the Justice League cartoon. So Yeah, don't ever let anybody tell you Robin isn't iconic. He's one of the most iconic fictional characters in the US. Like, that's not even a joke. I think if you just like Robin, Red and Green Boy Wonder, way more iconic than most DC and Marvel characters, especially in the pre-MCU days. Like back in the 60s, when it was just the Batman cartoon, not cartoon, the Batman live action series, and then the 90s when you had the animated series. Robin's always been a staple of pop culture for since like just consistently. Of course, more people know Robin than Zatanna. Zatanna, the only prominent role she has in anything is a couple episodes of Justice League Unlimited. Um, there's a Justice League video game where she's like in that only because they needed a second other female in there besides Wonder Woman, and she was, like, or I guess she is kind of she's like a recurring character in Young Justice, which I already mentioned. One of the reasons I really despise that show after season one is because they introduced Satana in season one and like give her multiple episodes of build up to becoming a member of the main team. And then they do this stupid time skip and now she's no longer a member of the team, which pissed me off because I think she's very interesting and has cool powers, you know. Hey, good job wasting another character. Terrific. I still think Robin is more well known than everyone on Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, even if he's not in the movies anymore, he still is in Young Justice, Teen Titans, a good chunk of the Batman cartoons, several of the movies as well. Like, it's not even close. I think they would be more likely to greenlight a Robin movie than the Captain America film. Oh, that was greenlight. That spinoff was talked about at one point. And then Batman and Robin crashed everything. But yeah, I already told you that the MCU literally was built off the backs of Marvel characters that nobody cared about. Like Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and X-Men's rights were taken because those were all more iconic than Iron Man or Captain America or Thor, which is why, Feige was like, "Oh my God, we still have the core members of the Avengers as our as the rights we still hold." It's like, yeah, because nobody wants them. The only thing Iron Man had before the movie came out was a TV show in the '90s that got canceled after 2 seasons. No, Robin is still an iconic, important. Like I said, he out of all the sidekick, he's easily the most recognizable. Yeah, James Avery also played War Machine on Spider-Man animated series too. I'm just saying it's really funny because the consensus now is that if you don't have a movie, you're not as iconic. But people still know who X-Men are. Like, they still know who Spider-Man is. Like I'd say probably the only early 2000s popular superhero group that kind of fell out of favor is Fantastic Four. That whole Robin argument came about because they made Superman dating a Robin in the comic. Yeah, don't remind me. I don't know. DC does a lot of weird stuff. I just always have to remind myself of that. Do a lot of things that don't make any sense. He said both of those characters were original, and I said he was smoking crack. I mean, you've heard the story, right, about modern comics are considered to not be as good as older ones. So just let him say whatever nonsense he wants. Ugh. It is funny too because people on Twitter are like, they're not going to give Toby Spider-Man 4. They're not going to give Andrew um, TASM 3. And I'm like, BS. Like Sony is making movies nobody wanted. I don't know a single person on planet Earth that wanted a Morbius movie. I'm really not joking when I say that. I've been on message boards. I've been on this website obviously for over a decade. I have never seen a group of people like and just anyone online say, "When's the Morbius movie?" Like I've seen people want a Venom movie, right? But that's because Venom's a character who actually has his own. Like he's kind of, I don't want to call him Spider-Man's Wolverine, but he is like of any character associated with Spider-Man, the one that has the most like spin-off stuff, like his own book and title, and just stories independent from him, where he just fights other symbiotes and villains and whatnot. Both of those, dude. There are no more original characters. It's like, oh look, it's Falcon, Sam Wilson. You know, oh really cool. Let's make him Captain America. Oh look, we're gonna give a character who's black the ability to climb walls and oh let's make him Spider-Man. Like it's just there are no more original characters. It's all just taking over the identity of someone more popular. Like if I made a superhero that was black, right? I would be very embarrassed that they ended up having to take over from a white character's position. I would feel very just disgusted because I want them to be their own character. I don't want them to have to, turn into somebody else. We still haven't seen Scorpion and Spider-Man, Black Cat, or Craven. I hope that Spider-Man doesn't set the record for recycling old villains. But this is my thing, Dio. I don't like what why is there an issue with using the same villain more than once? Like do you not remember what I told you about how one of the issues I have with the MCU is that it'll have a good villain and just throw him away after one movie. Like everybody talked about how great Killmonger was, but there was no intention to bring him back for the second one. As interesting as they thought he was just another one movie disposable throwaway villain. I mean, like recycling them and doing nothing like Sandman and Lizard. Okay, sure, but let's say they make Spider-Man the fourth MCU Spider-Man, right? Scorpion's the villain, right? And then for the fifth one, they have Green Goblin again, another Green Goblin from so Defoe again is Green Goblin, but it's an alternate universe one who is like giving Peter PTSD from when his aunt got killed by a Green Goblin. Wouldn't that be an interesting way of still keeping Defoe in the series, but also like a new twist on the mythos? You really gonna tell me you wouldn't want to see Defoe again as Green Goblin? Ever? Just like no more new actor? Are you really telling me that? You don't think that would be interesting if like they have it's a new version of Green Goblin from another alternate universe. The second hears that he gets the PTSD of seeing his aunt get murdered. You don't think that would be interesting? I would love if they did a movie where yeah, an alternate Green Goblin could be cool if he has differences than the first one. Well, look, he might still have the same personality, but what I'm conveying to you, okay, is that having Green Goblin come back, whether it be the alternate version or not, to torment Spider-Man again has a twist on it because it's not the same one, and it's also going to play into his lingering guilt over what happened to his aunt. And that would fix one of the issues I have with superhero movies and their one film villain throwaway syndrome, which I get really sick of. I just don't have a problem with anybody coming back. That's my thing. Like if they want to actually make a movie where they let Sandman be the main villain and tell this compelling story about his daughter dying from a disease or whatever, and he actually isn't like screwed over in screen time by two other antagonists, I'd be all for that. But that's why I said if they did Green Goblin again, it wouldn't be the same story because it's a new twist of Defoe as Green Goblin the third time in a major role, but he's here to torment Peter over what another version of himself did. When's the last time Zendaya talked to her dad? I don't even remember. It definitely wasn't during this one. He gets mentioned at the start of the movie, and that's about it. I don't know. It's just I really have a hard time believing we're never gonna see any of those villains again in anything. Probably not all together again, but I just can't imagine they would be like, yeah, that's it for you, you know. Oh, another issue I have with the movie, right, Dio, is that they have the original, Spider-Man in the story, Raimi version, and he doesn't even like he has no dialogue with Green Goblin at all. Other than getting stabbed by him, they don't talk to each other at a single point in the whole movie. Villain should have been Vulture should have come back for redemption arc. No, you know who should come back for redemption arc? You know who should? Doc Ock, because we've now seen two movies where he was like mostly evil or antagonistic, whatever. I'd like to just see Doc Ock as a protagonist, like in one of these, like that. Just continuing off of that version from Spider-Man 2, and just have him help Peter. It's like, yeah, we get a little bit of that toward the end, but basically, there's a lot more stuff they could do with Green Goblin and Doc Ock, and I really hope they do, and I hope they don't just let Defoe and Molina just retire and never be used again. Because that we already had a 15-year hiatus. Like, if you want to see new villains that aren't those two, you can go watch Spider-Man 3. You can watch TASM 2, Homecoming, Far From Home. Like most of these movies don't even have a minute, so I don't really like if they want to have both be in 3. I'm all for it, or 4 or 5. You know. Like, if you stick another villain in there each time, I don't really see an issue. Like, I guess what's so irritating to me is that I remember the Fox X-Men movies, and guess who would show up in all of them? Magneto. And I didn't see anybody complain to me, going, I'm so sick of Magneto. Man, Magneto actually, by the way, IGN ranked him as the greatest comic book villain of all time, which I don't think they're off at all with that. I'm just saying that I wish that with a character like Spider-Man's got one of the best rogues galleries of any character besides maybe Batman. Um, I just wish we could see some of his more iconic ones more than once or twice in our lifetime. So I really hope they both come back. I'm not going to hold my breath because those writers show me they're not the most competent of people. I'd like to see a version of Doc Ock that is still the one from Spider-Man 2 who just gets to be a protagonist for a whole movie. Because that would be totally different. That would literally make Spider-Man 2, No Way Home, and then whatever this third movie would be, a trilogy in and of themselves of like Doc Ock going from the scientist who had no powers to having powers being evil and to redeeming himself to having a second chance. Like that would be way more interesting than, well, let's just make a new character that we're gonna throw away after one movie. What if they had an alternate Norman Osborn that became Iron Patriot at the end of the film? Yeah, I'd be for that too. I just really like Defoe as Green Goblin. I think he should be in like six of these. You know, I think he's great. Easily the highlight of No Way Home besides Molina and Holland. I'm not even an Iron Boy fan, but I thought he did a good job. Remember, in this timeline, Tony existed, so I could totally see, and the Iron Patriot did too in Iron Man 3. So I could totally see them sticking that in there. Imagine we get a movie where he's like tormenting Peter, like, you couldn't save your mentor. You couldn't save your aunt. Who can you save? You know, and like it looks like he's dead at the end of the movie, right, Norman? And then you find out that, oh yeah, the Green Goblin gear got destroyed, but he just found he stole himself during the movie when he invaded Stark Industries an Iron Man suit, and he's like coloring it blue and red. That would be so cool because again, more with the focus. Because remember, we have de aging technology. They can make this man look 20, 30 years younger like that. So they could do so much. That's why I said green, like strike the iron while it's hot. Stick the phone another one. You know, like there. It. I really hope they use him again, and I hope they do some of this stuff because he's got the acting chops for it definitely, and I think he knows the character very well. So I just don't get how Thanos wiped out half the universe, half of everyone in the Avengers didn't have more villains on the team. You know what? Don't even bring up Thanos. I'm still mad about. Oh yeah, here's the main antagonist of the whole MCU. That's why he's only in one movie, pretty much. Yeah, they should do Goblin soon, though. If they're going to do it, yeah. Well, of course, I'm talking about them doing another. Dude, you know they're gonna try to do another one in like 2 years, 3 years. Like it's not gonna be that long. It'll be really cool if the villains for 4 are Scorpion and Goblin, and like it's Goblin, tormenting Peter over losing his aunt. And he's like, so I know what that other version of me did. How's May's tombstone? You know, just like completely screwing with them. That would be really great. You better believe if they stuck the phone more of these, I'd watch it. I just don't want another Carrie Fisher situation. I mean, you know, you saw it happen with Bozeman, right? Like you can die at any point. Like he was young and he still ended up dying. So he was actually, I think, 20 years younger than she was when she died. So yeah, I'm just there. That's something you run into when you make ongoing series with actors. Somebody who eventually might pass before you finish. So just have to be mindful of it. You know, when they made the decision to keep using Tom Hiddleston as Loki, they didn't know he was going to survive all 5 movies that he was in. You know, in real life anyway. You can't let your storytelling interest be overplayed or downplayed by what might happen in the future with one of the actors. Hell, if anything, that should encourage you to use somebody while they're still acting. You know, you gotta make this while the perfect or the right person is around. You know, that's why I want them to make Spider-Man 4 with Maguire because I think it would be most of the actors are still around, right? So just pop it in. I don't really understand the point of like a refusal to do it. You know. Mm. But yeah, I would like to see Defoe in another one of these with a smaller cast because then we can actually get every character to do something instead of just all these cameos, you know? Don't know if they'll do it, however. Dude, you know what'd be the funniest thing? Imagine if they bring back Zendaya for the fourth one, right? And then um she what do you call it? Like she encounters Green Goblin and he actually does kill her. Like they like he basically because they're clearly with this movie setting up Green Goblin as his arch nemesis, right? The villain that did the most personal damage to about anybody. It would just be like more stuff. Or somebody had another idea where they said it would be the craziest thing if like when they gave him the cure, they injected him. That same syringe still has the goblin in it, and then Ned ends up getting it, and that's how he becomes Hobgoblin. That would be so crazy. Oh man, wouldn't that be wacky? Like, him having this alternate personality that only manifests because he took the same serum that, or he got hit by the same thing supposed to cure you. There's a lot of stuff they can do. I really hope they bring back some of the other actors. You better believe I would see another 3 or 4 of these if they stuck Defoe or Molina in one, in each one or something. That's why I was saying I didn't care if the other Spider-Man were in it because I knew I was going to see it no matter what because they said Molina was in it. What is Zendaya was turned into a goblin. Well, you know what? You laugh, but I mean, let's not forget about the Ultimate Universe with the remember with where Gwen is Carnage, so that could happen. That's really not out the realm of possibility, like making the love interest a villain. I'd probably be all for that too, because remember, we really haven't seen any of the love interests actually have powers in any of these. I'm just saying that it would be really cool to have Defoe in one of these again because I think that was one of the issues I had with the other film series that it's like they always feel like they have to recast somebody if they want to have a character in it. And I just think there are certain actors that are like so good you can just have them be the character in more than one movie. Like I love that they brought J.K. Simmons back, and I said he was one of the highlights of the movie for me because they did more with him than I thought they would. They actually gave him multiple scenes, even if I don't think this portrayal is as good as the Daily Bugle one from the original film series because he doesn't have his different people to work around with. Like I said, there's stuff to enjoy here. I still think it's good. I just wish people actually allowed you to criticize things, didn't feel like they have to just rush to its defense so adamantly, like just relax. Yeah, we still haven't seen Black Cat. We still haven't seen Scorpion. We still haven't seen Craven. We still haven't seen Hobgoblin. Well, we've seen him without his costume on, but that's besides the point. I just really hope we end up getting to eventually see all of those in some movie or another. Now, did we see the Norman Osborn from Tom Holland's timeline, or is it just from Toby's? No, the one that's in No Way Home is from the first film series. So yeah, from the 2002 Spider-Man. I'm saying that apparently, if Norman doesn't exist in the MCU, like the Osborns don't exist in the MCU, I think it would be really cool if They either if they do two things, they either have another alternate version of Norman come to the MCU and stay there and like start messing with Peter, or they reveal that there is a version of Norman in the MCU who has a son. Like they can recast Harry, whatever. Um, and like that's how he screws with Peter from now on. Right, but I'm saying that it's apparently been confirmed that the Osborns don't exist in the MCU. So if you want more of him in it, you can like that's the excuse to keep using Defoe, that it's just another alternate version of this person who doesn't exist in this timeline. Look, like I said, the MCU already screwed itself up with the way it treated Spider-Man. So, like I'm just trying to make the best of what can be done here. So if they want to do it to where they want to keep using the actor and just say it's another alternate version of the character, that could work. So apparently the Osborns don't exist in the MCU. Doc Ock doesn't exist in the MCU. Electro doesn't exist in the MCU. Um, I see, but you get where like that really annoys me because if you don't end up bringing back any of those villains in any capacity for this next trilogy you're talking about, I'm going to be pretty pissed off because those are like Doc Ock and Green Goblin are easily Spider-Man's most iconic antagonists. And like, who are we left to work with if you're confirming that there's no alternate version of them in this timeline? Like, I guess maybe we could get Craven, but we don't even know if he exists in the MCU, and it's even less likely with Sony making a spin-off movie about him. I guess we could get like who else is left? We have Scorpion, we have Shocker, Vulture, but I just you see where they've screwed themselves up. Like you either have to keep using the actors from the previous series, or you're gonna have to do a hell of a retcon. Like you're gonna have to just because people are saying, oh, for the college trilogy, they're gonna have him with Harry and Gwen, but they just said the Osborns don't exist in this dimension, in this universe. So how the hell is Harry? Unless he has a new last name or some secret identity, which I don't believe. We haven't seen Smythe in anything other than the '90s cartoon. They really just made him vanish. But that's kind of like weird that they don't exist in the MCU. It would make more sense if like Electro was there but died. Yeah, that's why I'm saying I don't get them because they're limiting themselves. That's the best way to put it. You're either gonna if you want to see those villains again, you're either gonna have to use the older actors and use the multiverse stuff again to explain why they're there, or you're just gonna have to use you know B tier, C tier villains for from now on. I remember the MCU is like trying to make itself, oh, this is the shared collective universe. Okay, so why the hell don't you give your one of the main protagonists of your shared collective universe his arch nemesis, his arch enemies? Why is he not allowed to fight Doc Ock other than in one movie? Why is he not allowed to fight the Green Goblin other than one movie? I do think No Way Home would be a lot better if they found some way to like keep Green Goblin in the MCU because that like this sets him up perfectly to be the arch nemesis to this version of Spider-Man 2. Like that's why I said they really hurt themselves with just their decision making and like what stuff they choose to keep in place and not. They just don't exist. Dio says Electro. Electro what? It just kind of like I'm not even what's the way of saying it? I guess it's really frustrating when you have all of these people who like worship the MCU version of Spider-Man, say it's the best one, whatever. But it constantly finds ways to screw itself because you're either going to rely on these older actors from these previous film series to get me intrigued to want to see your movie because you just said we don't have younger alternate versions in this timeline, like with the Peter of this timeline being a younger alternate version of the ones we saw in the past. So I don't really know what else they can do besides either using the older actors or just new lesser known villains, you know? Oh, I was correcting my other okay. Smythe was in Amazing Spider-Man, but he wasn't the villain, he was just bullying Electro. Right, but okay, I was saying that they've really botched this stuff by saying that they don't exist in this timeline. That was a really dumb decision. Like, remember, they're trying to have some, universe that goes on for another 10 years or whatever. They really hurt themselves with that. I said Smythe was an amazing Spider-Man too, but he could have really been anybody. It didn't have to be him. I mean, Black Cat is an amazing Spider-Man too, but you wouldn't know that if you just watched the movie. They call her Felicia. She's there to set up more stuff that never came to pass. Oh God, man, I swear people just I really don't know what like people say, "Oh, I'm excited for the future of the MCU Spider-Man," but I can't be. Like we're gonna get a trilogy apparently where there's no Harry, right? Where he's possibly gonna have multiple love interests, which is already kind of um a bunch of villains that I don't really care that much for. Like I don't really see much. And again, I'll wait until we actually get some news about what they're going to do because I didn't care one way or the other about the Far From Home sequel until I found that it was going to have Melina as Doc Ock coming back for the first time in 17 years. So I'll just be like, okay, whatever. This is just the ending for me. And if you do something interesting, I'll come back. But outside of that, whatever. But look, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for coming, Dio. I appreciate it, especially because Norman came up with the Goblin Serum, trying to replicate the Super Soldier Serum, and you have yeah. That's but see, that's why I said they hurt themselves. They could have his connections to Captain America. They could have his connections to Iron Man with the Iron Patriot. You could have Defoe play Green Goblin. If you remember, they made 3 movies in 6 years. They could have Defoe play Green Goblin for a whole other trilogy if they wanted to. There's plenty of stuff that character and that actor can do that would be very satisfying to see unfold. But they won't do it because they like their little 1 movie throwaway villain. So that's just a bigger issue with the series than just this movie by itself. But look, Dio, I'm going to get off of here. So thanks for showing up. Same thing for Akatsuki Merchant. I'll do another stream probably on Wednesday or Thursday, but definitely on Christmas Saturday. So enjoy yourself. See ya, and thanks for coming.